topic, as all of you know, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. The topic is Industry 4.0 to Industry X.0, the challenges and opportunities. That is the way we have titled the entire session. For that, we have two very, very eminent speakers. We have Mr. Varadarajan, who is the director at Rajshree Sugars and Chemicals, which is a Coimbatore headquartered company, but operating throughout India. But in addition to his association with that industry, he has also been very active in industry associations like the CII. He was the president of CII Coimbatore zone. He has been very active in the southern region at the national level as well. We have the other speaker, Mr. 𝗬𝗲𝗂𝘀𝘁𝗿𝘆, who also was the president of CII Coimbatore, and he is the director of a company called RSM. I will give you a very brief introduction to the topic. I'll set the context, and then I will leave the floor open to the speakers. Everybody must be knowing what is Industry 4.0. Everybody calls today's situation as Industry 4.0. What we call Industry 1.0 was the first industrial revolution in the 1860s with the invention of the steam engine, when the manual processing became automated using power, not so much automated, but using power, the steam power and things like that. The second industrial revolution is what we may call up to about 1920, where there was mass production. There was also the concept of assembly line. There was use of more power, external power. We believe that with the pandemic, now the situation will be unknown. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be forecast. There will be disruptive changes. There will be changes which we have not experienced so far. So there's going to be a massive disruption in the way we work, in the way we operate organizations, in the way we manage organizations. There's going to be a massive disruption. What are the issues? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities in that situation? That is the topic for today. So without taking too much of your time, since Mr. Varadarajan is available on the video as well, may I request Mr. Varadarajan to go ahead, make his opening remarks, maybe for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you can restrict yourself with your opening remarks, that will give us time for interacting and asking questions and answers. Is that all right, Mr. Varadarajan?
Perfectly okay, Professor.
Excellent. So over to you for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you.
And I have the benefit of a clock right behind you, which is, I can read the time as 5:30, so I have got 15 minutes. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, for this webinar, it's my pleasure to be with you this evening. Though I'm not able to see all of you, Microsoft Teams doesn't seem to have a gallery view where I can see everybody, but I'm sure when we are interacting, I'll be able to see you. When Professor asked me to join for this meeting and say that we're going to speak about industry in the future, now, and he himself expressed it that we do not know where it is. Now, I'm just reminded about what Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense of United States, said when 9/11 happened. And, you know, the United States went to war in Iraq, Afghanistan. He made a statement which some of you may remember. He said, we have known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns. I wonder whether he was clairvoyant that he would also see something like this happening 20 years after 9/11. Whatever it be, we are facing that situation right now. And we also came up with the word, when the war against terror was going on, the United States Army came up with a word which they said VUCA. They said volatile, uncertain, confusing, and ambiguous. So today, what we have are ambiguous threats. We don't have clear and present danger. They're ambiguous threats because the escalation of the pandemic and our reaction to it has also been in stages. Now, some parts of the world have been very forward in trying to act proactively, and some people follow. There has been a lag. Even in the United States, Mr. Silva, who is the head of the National Basketball Confederation of the United States, which is, and the NBC is the greatest league in the world. It's an industry worth $8 billion. On March 12th, on the same day as WHO declared it as a pandemic, he said, let us cancel NBC for this entire season. The United States is still trying to keep everything open. His president thinks differently, the United States president, but he was clairvoyant and he shut it down. But because of that, many other sports federations shut down. Thereby, I think we have limited the damage in the United States because sport is the greatest congregator of people in the United States. And, they have thousands and millions of people congregating into stadiums, and imagine the chaos which would have happened because of social distancing would have been very difficult. Of course, it was followed by New Zealand, where their prime minister also declared a lockdown much before anybody else. And we should be very proud that our country, Prime Minister Modi also did the same thing, that he declared a lockdown much in advance of most other countries in the world, which has probably helped us in containing the pandemic to a great extent. Now, having said that, one of the things which is coming out of this pandemic is that we are trying to introduce a change, a behavioral change in the entire globe, that is social distancing, into a human society which is built on being gregarious. We love to be with each other, we love to hug each other, we love to rub cheeks with each other, rub noses with each other. We love to be in pubs and bars, we love to be in temples, we love to be in stadiums, we love to do everything else all together. Now, suddenly we are saying that we need to remain 6 feet apart. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I think is going to be the greatest challenge for us, because it is being thrust. In most countries, it is a law. You do this, you do that. And you know what human nature is. When somebody pushes you, you push back. And that's what is happening in many countries, because in the United States, they argue that it's their constitutional privilege to go and have a haircut. Now here, we have explicitly forbidden only a barbershop from functioning. I do not know how many of us have been able to have a haircut in this last 40 days, but obviously, that becomes a very important and pressing essential industry. But unfortunately, you can't cut hair standing 6 feet away. Now, therein lies the conundrum. When we go forward, we are bringing in certain change which we anticipate we may have to live with for the next 2 years. We may not be able to attend weddings the way we have been accustomed to, because we used to have weddings with 3,000 people attending, which means that we are very close to each other. Now, that's an industry by itself. That industry has been decimated and will remain so for the next 2 years. Hopefully it comes back, or hopefully we learn from it and we avoid such expenditure. But then what happens to all the stakeholders who were dependent on that industry? So you see where it goes. This is what I meant. This is an ambiguous threat. It's not a clear and present danger, but it's an ambiguous threat which will coalesce into a clear and present danger very soon. Now, let me just touch for a moment upon my industry before I go on to other places. Agriculture, agro-processing. India has, as part of its directive principles of state policy, that India should move towards total prohibition to safeguard the health of the citizens. Now, we had, in effect, prohibition in the country for the last 4 weeks. Now, we have been compelled to open up because the coffers run dry and the state needs revenue. Now, my industry depends on alcohol. Right? I'm a manufacturer of sugar from sugarcane, and from the byproduct we manufacture alcohol, and we also generate power. Now, Sugar. People have learned to eat at home. Confectioneries, so many other places, tea shops, everything had been shut down. So obviously production goes down and sales comes down. Alcohol also, there is, except for those who are lucky to have a stock of alcohol of their own, most people have run dry long back, and the country has been in a sort of a de-addiction center for everybody. Now, are we able to carry it off? Now, this is an ambiguous threat insofar as I am concerned, because if we presumably go towards total prohibition, what happens to my industry? What happens to the alcohol? Now, we have a blending program with petrol, which is currently at 10%. And the Prime Minister wishes us to go to 20% blend by 2030, which of course can absorb quite a considerable amount of alcohol, because when I mean a 10% blend, it means for every liter of petrol which you pour into your fuel tank, there is 10% of alcohol in it. So it acts as an oxygenator, and thereby, it improves its combustion, and therefore reduces emissions. So it is in a way a method by which you are introducing green fuel into the system. Now that is a possible goal which we may achieve, because when we first started off and said that we should have green power, we didn't anticipate that it will happen, it will accelerate, but now it could accelerate because of the fact that the other alcohol may go down. But anyway, that's a moot point. I wouldn't like to debate on that, because finally, when Tamil Nadu, for example, depends on 25% of its revenue from alcohol, of its budget. So it does behove that at some point of time, we may go back to allowing alcohol sales to be open everywhere. And the Supreme Court itself has been saying that it should go on online. And Zomato has immediately come forward to say that we will do it. You see how some people are able to be very agile and able to take up the thread instantly. Now, but what are the other things which have come about in agriculture? The fact that our biggest challenge in agriculture had been supply chain from farm to fork. The cost in India from farm to fork used to be close to 64% of the price of the product at the farm gate. Now, when I say 64%, you should look at it. In Scandinavia, it's about 10%, which is probably the lowest. And in a country like Indonesia, also in Southeast Asia, it's only 20 to 25%. We have 64%, which is taken away by many intermediaries in the process between farm and fork. So the farmer doesn't get the money, but a lot of other people have been depending. Now, in the current scenario, the state governments have stepped in and tried to bridge that gap and bring produce from farm to fork. Maybe this may stay. This would be a legacy which will stay. Thereby, my point here is the farmer would get a better income. So it has been a thought process in India that we need to double farmers' income. It has been a very difficult process, but it may succeed now if this is a legacy which we will live, which will stay. And I hope it does, because we little think of the farmer when we enjoy our meal every day, but we must appreciate the fact that he toils hard to grow the produce, but he doesn't get the reward as he should. Now, the day we see him driving a car is the day we should be proud that we have brought everybody into an inclusive growth. And this may be one of those events which may be triggered because of what has happened today. And I really hope it does, because the government is anyway already supporting a lot of things for cold chains, etc. So this may also act as a fillip. Digital technology, satellite mapping, which used to be only the point in larger structured industries like sugar and maybe plantations like tea and coffee, now may become a standard thing, because state governments itself may use such data which is already available with the National Institute of Informatics and take it up and be a little more. That means our estimates and predictions of food grains and of produce will be much better in future. That means technology absorption is getting accelerated at this point of time, right? Because it's not that we were not absorbing it, but this would accelerate it. Now, the MNREGA schemes, right, which has always been a bone of contention as to whether it is really useful. Now, if it could be linked to farm work, instead of the current method of sometimes it gets frittered away because of let me say uncertain outcomes, and sometimes it is used up in work which is just repetitive. If it can be linked, because it has already been suggested in the past by Kerala, now this may also come to stay because the government would like to continue MNREGA. So if it can continue it in linkage, it will create another source of manpower. Now, why I say this is because I'm going to the next point, that our issue of migrant labor. Now, we have been a nation which is diverse ethnically. At the same time, our diversity is our strength, but it's also sometimes a hindrance because we, irrespective of where we travel, we have very strong cultural roots to where we are born. We still talk of a native place. We never call ourselves Indian. Like yesterday, I heard 𝗫𝗬𝗏 talking on TV about the Biharis being transported home from the various parts of the country. He said there are more than 5 lakh people who are working from Bihar elsewhere. So he's saying that getting all of them back is not easy. They have started the job, but it's very difficult. So he was saying, proud Bihari. We first say that, and then we say I'm an Indian. So this is now, while this is very good because it just shows how much we love our regional ethnicity. At the same time, this also draws us back. So one of the things is that we have 1.5 lakh people from Tamil Nadu who are working in Maharashtra digging trenches for telecom companies. We have 1.5 lakh people from Maharashtra working in Tamil Nadu, inclusive of in my sugar factory for cutting cake. Now you see, now the point is that we are trading labor from across borders. Now, why is it that we are not able to work where we are born? There are other cultural issues to that because I have discovered in my study on the ground in various parts of the country, like there are many people who are hold land in their respective regions, and it doesn't behove him to be seen doing menial work in that region. So he prefers to go elsewhere. Yes, sir.
No. I thought because we are running short of time.
I'm watching the clock. I'm
Okay.
watching the clock. Yeah, I've got 1 more minute. Yeah. So thank you, Professor, for reminding me of the time. So this is something else which we need to look at, because whether we could utilize manpower where they are, which now even UP is contemplating, but we will come to that a little later in our discussion. I'm just leaving it with you as a thought, right? Then labor reforms. Many states are coming up with tremendous labor reforms, which will, I believe, come to stay, because we need easy entry and exit. We need flexible work times, work at home. Yes, I know it's difficult. It's not that easy, because it's easy to say, because especially when you don't have a choice, your productivity is limited. If I have a choice between working at home or office, then my productivity is better. These are all studies which have been done, but we'll have to look at it, whether we can move towards flex timings. And another issue in this would be whether the gig economy would get a fillip, because this is precisely where it will lead. Because there are a lot of talented people who are being let go by various organizations because of lack of support for their industry, whether this will help, whether this will give a fillip to the gig economy. And maybe people who are talented will always find somewhere to land on their feet. I do hope so, and I believe that it will happen. The very heartening thing is even the judiciary has learned now to use video conferencing to run their cases. And I have it on, from senior counsel that it's so easy now because clients are not traveling to their offices. The lawyers don't have to travel to Chennai and Bombay or Bangalore or High Courts or the Madras or Supreme Courts. You're able to do it from the peace of your own office at home. The justices are there. There is no distractions. People are clear. There is no repetition. It is recorded automatically. And if you use the software, it can be translated into typewritten matter very easily. So you see, there are certain things which are happening in the background, which will remain as a legacy for us. But yes, there will be issues. Information, we will try to utilize it. We will all maybe shift to cloud servers. It will act. Not that we were not trying to, but it will. Now these things will get accelerated. Information technology platforms will become a more stronger inculcated into industry. But it doesn't mean that we will start hiring IT people. But what we will do is that IT service industries will become more predominant, because we will rather leave it to them because they're better equipped for it. But on the HR front, we will have issues. How do we motivate people when you work remotely? You don't have the pleasure and the joy of collaborating with somebody face to face. I haven't seen you, Professor, for many weeks now, right? Now, the point is that, yes, it is interesting to speak to people. We will come to live with digital platforms, with the video conferencing. It is easy, less stressful. But at the same time, we will, as a human being, as I said, we are gregarious people. Social distancing 6 feet away is one thing, but saying that we don't even have to travel to each other is a very different thing. Hospitality industry will take a hit, travel industry, tourism. Like, I don't see myself getting onto a flight to Delhi in the next 6 months, right? Even if somebody wants me, I would rather talk to him on video because it's possible. And we discover that it is easy to do so. So going forward, some of these things may come to stay. So the hotel industry and all the hotel rooms we have built up, they have to find an alternate use for their rooms. Currently, they're being used for COVID-related issues. Who knows? This could become a thing, not for illnesses, but it could be places where people could use as co-working spaces, where people could rent it as a day offices. The hotel industry also will have to rethink a whole lot of things. And of course, people are staying safe. My wife is a doctor, and most doctors don't have any patients today, which is very good. Of course, people do not wish to go to a hospital because you don't want to pick up infection. At the same time, because everybody is staying home safe, they're also not picking up infection. So it's good that, in that way, you stay home, you eat at home, and you stay safe. These may be certain legacies which we learn. Of course, there is a lot more in the sense that because it's an evolving thing, as Professor also was saying. So I will stop at this point, Professor, and we will.
Thank you, Mr. Varadarajan. I think is Ilango still on audio? Sunil, is Mr. Ilango on audio?
Can you hear me, Professor? Can you hear me?
Yes, Ilango, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I had logged off through another device.
I can also see you on the video.
Yeah, I've used another device. I had to, something's wrong with the earlier device, and if it has to go wrong, that's what tech is all about. If it has to go wrong, it will go wrong.
Absolutely. That is Murphy's Law, and I'm a strong believer in Murphy's Law. Ilango, yeah. I don't know whether you heard Mr. Varadarajan.
I did.
You did. Excellent. What is your take on where the industry is going towards? Let us say in the next about 3 to 6 months and then thereafter. How do you see the movement of the industry?
Thank you, Professor Bala. And at the outset, I'm really sorry for causing this delay in starting this program. I'll straight away dive into the issues. I think many of you must have already heard about the fact that we are going to have a pre-COVID era and a post-COVID era. I mean, this is the kind of talk we've been having. The lifestyle as we have known it till now seems to be undergoing a change. How much of a change will continue when there is a herd immunity or when there is a vaccine is something we got to wait and see. Having said that, there are a lot of changes which we have seen is going to become effective, and people have tasted blood. I mean, in terms of certain aspects that we have already got used to, people have already seen how these can be benefited. Like Varda said a little while before me, a lot of changes were already happening, but COVID has accelerated the direction towards it. For example, work from home. Today, the IT companies who have already been wanting to cut costs have found a new way of still getting work done by lowering the cost of infrastructure. So this is going to have a profound impact on the real estate sector and also the construction sector. So which means so much less space is required. So there's a total shift and refocus required in this sector. Take new areas which were already coming in, like your 5G network, which China was already implementing. Today, they perfected the art, used it for identifying and reducing the impact of COVID through their surveillance and face recognition technology. That is going to have a serious impact on our privacy in our own lives. Even our own government wants to use some of these technologies. Of course, there is us being a democracy, it's going to have its own different dimensions. Take the issue of travel. 9/11 was a huge game changer for the security in the travel industry, where earlier you could walk through any airport anywhere in India. It was always restricted, but throughout the world you could do that. But now that changed in the US and the Western countries. Now you're not going to have any human interaction when you're going to check in, when you're going to board that flight. So all these are going to change. The entire airport is going to look different. We've already seen a few of those changes happening place. So these things are already happening in our day-to-day life, hygiene. So all these are going to happen. Now coming to the manufacturing industry, where I am a part of, where we have already been talking about Industry 4.0 and how we gear up towards 4.0, where Professor, you started off by explaining what it is all about. We were already in the direction of trying to see how we can network our equipment, how we can collect data, how we can use data as the base for everything that we do. Big data was already becoming the thing. It was already being used for various things, including the political life, including campaigning, marketing, whatever it was. We were also looking at using it for, say, remote handling, improving the efficiency, using artificial intelligence to identify problems so that we get an alert about the problem, that we don't have to depend on humans to decipher what the issues are. So this was the direction which we are heading. But now what has happened in this post-COVID era? For example, right now, we've been allowed to open our industry with 50% strength. So which means that with 50% of our labor force, we have to get the maximum efficiency. So which means we would be pushed to using these tools so in order to be most effective. So we are already on that thought process. So if you look at transport industry, I am a supplier to automotive industry as an automotive component supplier. We've already seen changes towards electric and automotive autonomous vehicles. So this is going to be accelerated much more because your interaction with people. See, one thing which COVID has brought around, which Vardha also explained, is the fact that how we look at our own social life, about interacting with people, the distance that we are supposed to keep from each other is so artificial and not so natural to us human beings. We find it extremely difficult. We are social animals, and for us to stay this way is going to be extremely difficult. But nevertheless, today we are forced to it, and innovations towards this area is going to come up. Less dependence on human beings. So this was already going to be there, especially in the area of manufacturing, where using mass manufacturing with machinery and artificial intelligence and robotics was the norm. Now it is going to be accelerated. I saw one message by one of the participants talking about reducing cost. Reducing cost will always be a part of the mantra. If you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. At the end of the day, the consumer has to be given the best product at the best price. That's how he's going to look at it. And that's also what's going to happen. As much as people are talking about moving away from China, that's not going to happen unless we cut down costs and we give them efficient thing. Otherwise, 2 years down post-COVID, people go back to China. Cost will be everything and not all these sentiments about who gave you the virus and things like that. So having said, so these changes are going to be there. Professor correctly put it. Now, what is 4.0 going to look like? Or is it going to be an X.0 that we don't even understand? While the process towards X.0 is going to happen instead of 4.0, how it is going to look like, what are the changes is going to be anybody's guess. We've seen numerous people predicting different things. Numerous webinars and seminars have become the order of the day. Everybody has their own prescription. But I would like to take everything with a pinch of salt, store all the information that they give me, but you don't rush up to implement any of these because we don't know how it is going to be. Today, for example, they've asked us to social distance within the workplace. They've said use all the sanitizers. But we do all that, and after, as soon as this is over, they go to the task mark where there is no social distancing. So we got to be prepared. What I'm trying to say is that as much as we do our best from our side, we got to be prepared for everything which happens outside our environment, and that is the most important thing. And for us in the industry, what matters is how do you go about taking care of your day-to-day requirement, your finances, especially your cash flow, your capacity utilization. These are the issues for the next 6 months. You ask me what is our focus. We won't be specifically looking at any of these long-term issues, the immediate issues, but any of the long-term issues, the solutions which can give us to achieve these short-term objectives, we'll definitely implement it. So as we go and step inside and start working towards reaching our short-term objectives, we'll try to use the long-term tools. And how X.0 is going to look like is anybody's guess. And what I told you about surveillance, artificial intelligence, all these things are going to be different tools, and many more innovations are going to come in this field, and we need to be geared to absorb them. And that is what we are looking at, and that's what we industry are going to do. And from our side, one request, since I'm addressing management schools and I have stalwarts from various management schools, is that we need you to help us also, because this is something which some of us can comprehend a little faster. Many of us in the industry, be it manufacturing, depend on others to feed us this. And if, as people in the knowledge industry, all of you are so much in touch, I think you have to prepare and give us the kind of feedback, both as a consultation or with even manpower, to adopt to these quick changes. And how your students or even the management schools are going to help us adopt is your success as well. And that is what we are looking forward to, all of you doing it. And I do hope that Indian industry comes out of this strongly, and India comes out of it strongly. And as a humankind, we are much more aware of what our limitations are, where we stand with the environment. We've had environmental gains. How do we sustain them as human beings? If this is going to help us evolve into better ones, I think this is worth the trouble we've gone through. And I really look forward to a great future for all of us.
Thank you, Ilango. Thank you. That was wonderful. Now, to cut short the time, I'm going to ask both of you specifically to list for us 5 things, just 5 things you would like us to do for the future. While preparing ourselves for the future, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the 5 things I would like you to do. I want both of you to say 5 things each. Are we?
Yes, Professor. Can I just say that again? You want us to tell you what we expect from the management
from
school?
The business schools.
From the business school.
Because this is the Association of Indian Management Schools.
Correct. Yeah.
And I would like you to tell us what is it you would like us to do in order to prepare for Industry X.0. 5 specific things. Very, very specific things.
Right, sir. First off, understanding and adapting to technology and predicting technology changes.
Yes.
It's a very vast subject, but nevertheless, it's there. Second point would be understanding human beings more. The reason I say this is because currently we have a different way of approaching industry, everything, marketing, etc. was very different. Now it's going to change, which means that, while of course Cambridge Analytica is a bad word today, but such analytical tools will be more useful, but understand that that kind of tool has to be created by extremely versatile people. So you need people who can think like that, who can think behavioral sciences and think how people's behavior is going to change. Third thing I would say is how do we make a balance between the fact that we have huge amount of labor in some parts of the country, some parts of the world, say for example India. Now, while we may think that if you had automated more, you would not be so dependent on human beings. Therefore, you could operate a plant even if there is a pandemic. But that's not an answer for a country like India, because we still have to give gainful employment to a whole lot of civilization. Like you have the current guest worker problem who are traveling all over, who are looking at jobs at a very low blue collar level. So while it's easy to say you automate artificial intelligence, etc., how do we balance this for bringing inclusive growth and making sure that we do not increase the inequalities in the system?
Would you call it reskilling?
Yes, also reskilling, reskilling those people, and because we need to bring them into it. So while artificial intelligence could possibly one day you could do everything, and a human being can simply sit aside and enjoy his food, but I don't think a human being is meant to do that, because a human being's self-esteem will be worn out at that point of time. And if that happens, God forbid, we'll have no more will to live. So I think we need to maintain that, we need to maintain the challenge for people, right? How do you balance this? That's the thing. right? The fourth thing which I would say would be what I was just talking about, the human resources challenges when we are forced to collaborate over long distances. And how do we keep people on track, motivated, when you are not able to, spend time offline with your colleagues?
Do
Because
you think that human resources function in an organization will no longer require such large resources? Most of it can be automated and done outside. Only very, very few core activities of human resources function need to be there in the organization.
So there are two things to this, Professor. One is the technical side of it, which is, the processes to run your systems, etc. That's different. I'm talking of, when you have people working from far distances, you need a lot of, it's a challenge to keep everybody motivated at the same level, because you can't walk in and have a town hall where I can touch and feel people. I can't see people, I can't see your eyes. Now, but we need to keep that same level of aggression, and as a matter of fact, even better it if possible. So maybe we'll have more millennial workers, people who come in as gig economy, people who come in for certain assignments, etc. But then how do you keep the collaborative platforms productive and focused on what you want, and keep the creativity and curiosity of everybody at the same levels? So it's very easy to get distracted when you are away from each other, because it's not just what you do inside four walls, but sometimes that is around the coffee table, around the lunch table. There's a whole lot of more interaction, which now will not be there. So how do we handle these things? Right?
Okay.
This is a challenge. Yeah.
Okay.
And the fifth thing is how do we teach people to learn that the inevitable never happens, but the unexpected does. I mean, John Keane said it. But how do we translate this into making people understand that just because you have qualified doesn't mean whatever you have learned is going to help you go and handle your life tomorrow in a professional way? Because you may be faced with a black swan like nobody else saw. So each time it happens, we are still caught off guard. We had many things, but these are the 5 things I would like to.
Thank you, Arvind. Ilango, your 5 list.
Yeah, thank you, Vardha, for giving me the little time to think. Firstly, from an MSME perspective, because I interact with a lot of MSMEs, a lot of medium and not so large companies. So from all of us, even today, I was with 15 of them trying to tackle some issues with regard to electricity and things like that. So the next 9 months is all about survival. If you look at any top person, Jack Ma was talking only about survival and don't think of growth, don't make long-term plans. So survival is going to be the first challenge to all of us. So the first thing which I would think, I don't know how management school can help us, but then different entrepreneurs have different challenges today. Some of them have financial issues where they don't have cash flow. They will run into trouble. They would have expanded. They would have stretched themselves too much that they won't be able to handle it. They will need hand holding and help, which is required. Capacity utilization is going to be a problem if demand doesn't pull off in a particular sector. Take the areas like tourism, travel is going to be sick for at least a year, at least till the end of this year. So how are they going to survive? So all these people I can only set you goals. How management schools can figure it out is something for you to figure. I can tell you what the problems are. So many of us in the industry are going to face these specific problems, markets, challenges, customers, pull, everything. So where we are going to stand, how are we going to adopt to this changing situation in the near term, within say 9 months to a year, this fiscal. The second issue would be how to come out with long-term specific goals. Okay, now we have figured it out. How do we look at identifying our core strength and long-term specific goals? If the management schools can help us do it with your students as a consultancy, if you're able to help us figure out okay, you're good in this, and these are very similar lines. Why don't you take this product? For example, Rajshree Sugars got into sanitizers very well. I mean, they had Varda being a management expert, he didn't need your help, but people in the MSME require it. So how do you adopt yourself? Some of the MSMEs have adopted, use this. Some of the nimble entrepreneurs have used this opportunity. I can see many of my friends trying to sell sanitizers, masks, everything to me. So, and different innovations, sprayers and automatic dispensers and things like that. So yes, okay, these are all small short-term things, but on the long run, what are these sectors? This is a sector which is going to come out. Identifying these sectors. I think B schools, if you're going to teach students how you're going to think big, you should also help them think and help them develop the tools as to how to identify such spots, whether they want to work for somebody or be an entrepreneur. Their ability to identify these things is the skill which is going to take them a long way. I think this is where B schools should focus on and for themselves and their students. The third one is preparing the students, which is always there, the attitude and approach. I think as India, the demographic dividends which we talk about, we're still missing it. We saw the attitude and approach of the youngsters during this COVID thing. Still, there's a lot of sense of responsibility which is missing. And I think as B schools, within your own dream, your own students, I think setting their attitude and approach. See, take the American students who come out. I know you get products which through 12th standard and even colleges where your raw materials are not exactly the best. But having said that, if you can use your opportunity to get us people with better attitude, better approach towards these things, that'll make a whole lot of difference. It's not the technical skills. Technical skills can always be learned. You can add it very easily. But your general approach to how do you work. So if you can send us such skilled people with better attitude, that's more important for all of us in the industry. The next is what are the tools we can use for analytics and things like that. A lot of us in the industry are not aware of a lot of tools which are there. There are large tools, they are there in the domain, they are available in the net, even as open source. But how do you connect them to what we require is something which most of us don't have an idea. And this is a great opportunity to connect industry with the tools which are available, analytical tools which can help them better this thing at low cost. Yeah, these don't actually cost much when you look at a particular MSME or an industry's needs. So how do you get these tools, design those tools, make them adapt to the needs of the industry? That would be the fourth point. And the final thing is today we are talking about opportunities, China, and even earlier, India as a country, we needed to step up the employment requirement. The number of youngsters who are coming to the employment market is huge. Entrepreneurship is one area which has to be focused on. Today, in the changing environment, new opportunities are being thrown up by a dozen. It is for the first people to come and grab it. So if you can help them identify this, I think entrepreneurs, instead of going and making another pump set, putting up another foundry, putting up any of these existing industries, new opportunities. I mean, take the changes which we saw. Take your mask, which was selling for 90 paisa or 1 rupee or 1.5 rupees, today went up to 20 rupees and it's come down, of course. So the thing is, of course, you shouldn't jump into a wrong thing at this time. But how do you identify these opportunities and creating entrepreneurs out of your students? I think that should be the focus. And in today's context, the opportunities are opening up because as far as I know and as I see it, Varda can correct me if I'm wrong, within the next 1 or 2 years, 25% of the current industries pre-COVID is going to close down. And you're going to see another 25% come up. And the 25% is going to be new, and many of them are going to be the different sunrise sectors. And trying to prepare people for that would be the best thing. And I think with this situation, you have a job in your hands, Professor, and the AIMS team. We look forward to interacting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We are just 10 minutes past 6 o'clock, and therefore I'm compelled to stop this. But it's a very, very fascinating, very interesting session. Hopefully, I will discuss with the AIMS Secretariat whether we can have another session meaningfully on this, slightly longer time. But thank you very much for your contribution, and thank you very much for making us realize what is it that we can do for the future. Thank you very much. I look forward to greater interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Varda.
Thank you. Thank you, 𝗓𝗏𝗀.